On the line with us is Leopold, the executive director of the Labor Institute, which he co-founded in 1976. He's the journalist and author of several books, including The Looting of America. His most recent book is Wall Street's War on Workers, which I've got around here someplace. Wall Street's War on the Working Class, let me start over. Wall Street's War on Workers, How Mass Layoffs and Greed Are Destroying the Working Class and What to Do About It. TheLaborInstitute.org, by the way, is the website. Les_Leopold is his Twitter handle. Les, welcome back to the program. It's been a while since we talked. Tell me about your new book.
Thanks for having me, Tom. This book was kind of a remarkable thing for me. It was a discovery. I had been, like you, looking at the growing inequality in the economy, but I had never quite gotten down to looking at it from the point of view of the people who were most impacted. And I found that mass layoffs turn out to be an enormously important thing to working people. As I started to investigate it, I found we made two discoveries. I made two discoveries in the research. The first is that mass layoffs are having a tremendous impact on politics. It turns out that in the blue wall states of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, that as the mass layoff rate goes up in any given county, the Democratic vote goes down. And this, you can see this really clearly in Mingo County, West Virginia. I don't know if you're familiar with that county, Tom, but that's where Mother Jones came and spoke in the early 20th century. And there were these fantastically bloody coal wars between the thugs for the coal industry and the United Mine Workers that were trying to organize. Anyway, Mingo County became heavily Democratic. Bill Clinton in 1996 got 69.7% of the vote. In 2020, Joe Biden got 13.9%.
Wow.
69, almost 70% to 14%, basically.
Wow.
What happened in that county? It's all white. What happened? Well, Mingo County, which only has 25,000 people, went from 3,300 coal jobs to 300 coal jobs. That county lost more coal jobs than any county in the entire country during that period. And people got fed up because nothing was done. Nothing at all was done to deal with their situation. One could imagine, even going back to Jimmy Carter, I know you recall the CETA program where they hired
I hired one of them.
There you go. And hired
I ran a nonprofit at the time.
Yep, they put 700,000 people to work in a matter of months. Think about Mingo County. If you'd gone around to local PTAs and town meetings, you could ask people, what do you need? They would say, our schools are crumbling, the roads are in bad shape.
We need jobs.
And there are great socially useful things that we could do. Reclaim the mines, clean up the streams down river. We could have put several thousand people to work immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing happened. You know what happened instead? They left it to free enterprise. And free enterprise came in, and a couple of small drugstores started to compete with each other in prescribing opioids.
Oh, yeah.
And they became two of the largest opioid distributors in the entire country. The 5-state area, cars from 5-state area came in there. So this is what replaced the opioid industry. I mean, literally, this was the free market replacement.
Wow.
So people were disgruntled, and they turned on the party that they had saved them from the Cold Wars and supported the mine workers.
Well, and the reality is that Bill Clinton signed the NAFTA deal, even though Reagan and Bush negotiated it, and has taken an awful lot of the blame for the neoliberal policies that Reagan pioneered, because Clinton and to a large extent Obama continued to cheerlead for those policies. The first Democrat who has pushed back on neoliberalism is Joe Biden. So you can see that instead of doing a real socially useful job program, they did the neoliberal policies, and it burned them. Yeah. Well, it's burning them also in the blue wall states as they become increasingly purple in the same way. The second discovery, though, was that people could come back at me and say, wait a second, it's not economics, like Paul Krugman says this all the time. It's not economics.
It's resentment. It's that these people basically are what Hillary called a basket of deplorables, that they become increasingly racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, et cetera. Well, we looked at that too. And we use these very long-term, deep surveys, voter surveys, not like what you see before an election. These have, 40, 50,000 people answering questions. And we created a cohort of what we call the white working class. And there were 23 socially hot button questions that they asked. And we wanted to see what happened to this cohort over a period of time. In the last, let's say, 2 decades, in no case did they become more deplorable. In many cases, they became very liberal. For example, should gay couples be allowed to adopt children? That went from like 35% to 75% support for that idea. The one that really struck me was legalization of, and in the question they said illegal immigrants who'd been here 3 years, pay taxes, no felonies. That went from 35% to 65% support.
Whoa.
65% of the white working class wants to legalize hardworking immigrants. So that can't be the explanation. Certainly not the explanation in Mingo County. It's not the explanation anywhere. It's this mass layoff catastrophe.
Right.
And as you know, as well as anybody, these are not acts of God. This is not technological change, is not causing these mass layoffs. It's very deliberate policies from Wall Street. And that's what took us into the next realm, which is what's causing it. And basically it comes down to two big things: stock buybacks, and the second is leverage buyouts. Now we call them private equity hedge fund acquisitions. And we started looking at companies in the blue wall states and elsewhere. And every time they do a mass layoff, if you go back just a little bit, you'll see either they were a party to a leverage buyout or they were doing a mass buyback of their own shares.
Which are both just ways of saying billionaires and the executive, the CEO class, are stripping the companies for their own profit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this siphoning, I'd understood the ripoff before. You've written about it, I've written about it. The siphoning of wealth. But what I hadn't looked at was the flip side, which was this incredible explosion of mass layoffs. Between 1996 and today, there have been at least 30 million people who have gone through a mass layoff. You add in their families, we're talking half the working class of America or more have been crushed by mass layoffs. Imagine being in rural Pennsylvania and there are 1,000 people in a facility, it gets shut down.
Yeah,
what are you going to do?
Yeah, it's why when Reagan came into office, about 2/3 of America was in the middle class. A third of Americans had good union jobs, and the other third had the equivalent of them because they set the local wage floor. By the time Reagan was done, but now instead of 2/3 of Americans being in the middle class, it's 43%. And I think it tracks back to these mass layoffs that you're talking about, and that tracks back to CEO greed. And by the way, the leverage buyouts and the whole private equity thing, that was illegal during the Reagan years, and stock buybacks were illegal until Reagan, I believe it was Ray Donovan was his labor secretary, until Reagan legalized them.
Absolutely right. In 1982, stock buybacks were limited to 2% of corporate profits, 2%. Today, it's approaching 70%.
Yeah.
7 out of every $10 of profits are being siphoned out and it's a very easy way to enrich the Wall Street stock sellers. They're not even investors. And the CEOs who get now, their pay is now determined primarily through stock incentives. Used to be they got 85% of their pay in salary and bonuses. Today, it's 85% of their pay in stock buybacks.
It's a perverse incentive.
Perverse indeed. And you mentioned that when the shift from Reagan to Clinton was telling us, Bill Clinton was telling us, look, you're going to learn, your kids at least are going to learn new skills. They're going to get into high tech. They're going to do what you do. You know, they're going to get these great new skills. Well, last year, this is shocking. Last year, 262,000 jobs in the high tech sector disappeared due to mass layoffs. Since January 1, another 56,000 jobs have gone to mass layoffs. And that sector does more stock buybacks than any other sector.
Wow.
It's just phenomenal. So you have this anger building up from below. That's what I got really in touch with this book, and it's bursting onto the political scene. And what's happening is politicians and pundits, except for very few, are dismissing it, saying, "Well, look, you know, they're lost causes. You know, they're never going to support progressives. We should just write them off." One politician that's in a very contested election, Sherrod Brown, just did this. You're going to love this, Tom. He just did published a article called "Wall Street's War on Workers: Stock Buybacks." Yeah. I saw that. I freaked out. I said, "Fantastic! He's using our book. He's spreading it around. You know, we've got it made." No, what it was a reprint of his 2019 article, and he'd been. I never saw that, and he never saw my book. But we're talking about exactly the same thing. Yeah. And he's made a decision that if you run against Wall Street and you run against stock buybacks and you run against mass layoffs, you will attract the white working class. And so few Democrats are doing it. It's driving me crazy.
Well, that was the basis of Trump's campaign in 2016, was I'm going to bring the jobs back from China. I mean, you know, and
you remember Carrier air conditioning?
Yeah.
Oh, that's an incredible story.
Oh, I know. And I'm sorry we don't have time for it, but the book is Wall Street's War on Workers: How Mass Layoffs and Greed Are Destroying the Working Class and What You Can Do About It. The author is Les Leopold. Les, thanks so much for dropping by. Keep up the great work and good luck with your book.
Thank you so much, and you too.
Thank you. Great having you with us. 18 minutes past the hour.